Welcome back to another episode of the Pittsburgh Sports Castle Podcast. My name's Rachael Kriger. I'm only slightly the host today because we have a really cool thing happening here in the show within, after we talk about some news and happenings around the Burgh. But Owen Krepps is with me today, and he has a really cool little interview with Matt Gajtka from basically every outlet in Pittsburgh possible, but works primarily for Pittsburgh Sports Now, Pittsburgh Hockey Digest, and a couple others around the city. So be sure to tune in to that. That's, towards the later end of the show. But Owen, welcome back. Happy January.
Yeah,
I can't believe
February, yeah. Happy start to the NHL season and NWHL season, pretty much.
Yes. Oh, yes. The NWHL season also kicked off. They're doing
2 weeks in Lake Placid.
Yeah, they're doing a bubble. So that's super cool. So shout out to the ladies up there rocking it on the ice, and then to the men in the NHL. I haven't heard like any big COVID outbreaks at all, so that's good. But yeah, so we've got before we get to Matt's segment, we've got some kind of news and happenings around the city. But we always start out with a little banter. So just, how are you? How's life?
All right. I'm all right, hanging in there as a junior right now. Kind of getting back into the coverage of RMU athletics for Colonial Sports Network now, given the fact that every season was delayed. So now we're in the midst of hockey and basketball season. Volleyball start up tonight, so that's pretty good overall. And then I'm just doing my own thing on my YouTube channel with the Penguins, and then obviously here with Pittsburgh Sports Castle.
Yeah, good stuff all the way around. My life is literally church, coaching, and homework. That pretty much sums it up. But I'm so happy that we're able to have basketball for the kids. It's really great to be able to be back into it. It's a lot different. I was joking last night that we can only have a certain amount of people in the gym at the school, and I have to be a lot more discreet than usual because the other team can hear us in the huddle because there's it's not full. So I have to be like super discreet and like whisper, and all the kids are like, huh? What did you say? And I'm like, everyone shut up and listen for a second. But it's good to have that back. But why don't we jump right into it, and we'll start with most important to least important leagues. I'm slightly kidding on that. So to start out, we've got a lot of stuff happening with the Riverhounds organization. They kind of came out with a little outline to what the season is going to look like this year. They announced on Thursday after the Board of Governors meeting that the 2021 regular season is going to begin around May 1st, which isn't, kind of shocking at all. I know that's like when the NWSL is kind of aiming to begin. And then who knows with MLS because of the CBA, but that's a whole different story. But there is going to be 4 divisions and a 32-game regular season across 27 weeks, which will end in October. So I think there's going to be a lot of like doubles in the sense of, having a Saturday and a Wednesday game, because usually it's a 32-game season, but they start in like March. So to start in May, I think there's going to be a few doubles. So there is kind of some flexibility to it in the sense the Board of Governors approved for clubs to begin playing anywhere between April 24th and May 15th. So that kind of gives them a little bit of cushion. There's going to be further announcements coming along the way about scheduling, division alignment, playoff structure, the whole 9 yards. And then you also have to tie into the fact that usually there's the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup that teams from MLS and USL play in, and they canceled it last year, obviously, because of COVID. There's no word really to if it's going to happen in 2021 yet. So that'll be something to keep an eye out for. I'm not hugely optimistic, but I would love to see it come back. But from a personnel standpoint, the Riverhounds signed a defender, Preston Kilwayne. I don't know how to say his last name, so if he's listening, please correct me if you hear me pronouncing it wrong. He was signed to the typical deal of a 1-year contract with a club option for 2022. He was with New York Red Bulls too for the last 2 years. He's a Costa Rican international. Bob Lilly seems to like him. He said he's an athletic center back that's comfortable on the ball. And he had his college soccer experience playing at Florida Gulf Coast University. And he was the Atlantic Sun Conference Defensive Player of the Year as a senior in 2018. So it seems like he has a little bit of pedigree to his name. And he is a native of Texas, but like I said, he is a Costa Rican international because he has that dual citizenship. And the nice thing about his college career was he spent some time in the summers and when the seasons weren't really happening with a couple different U23 teams, the Tampa Bay Rowdies and the Seattle Sounders. And as someone who covers the Sounders for Last Word on Soccer, they have a really good youth organization, and they have a lot of homegrowns every year. So to be able to be part of that U23 team is pretty darn good. And the team also re-signed a player. They re-signed defender Danny Riviera. So right now the roster looks like it's at 3, 6, 9, 10 players. So this late start date is definitely going to help in that sense, because if the season would start in February like it usually does, then yikes, because that's a 10-player roster and you need 11 players on the pitch. So there needs to be a few more signings happening sooner rather than later. So that's something that Bob Lilly and company are going to have to look out for. And then the last thing I wanted to mention on the Riverhounds, I'm not going to get too in-depth in it because I don't know what the Riverhounds plans are yet. But last year there was this rumor that the USL was going to open, or I guess not open, I guess startup is the right word, a women's pro-am league. And there was a lot of controversy around it because the NWSL, the top tier women's league in the United States, is still kind of growing slowly. It's one of those slowly but surely things. They've got some expansion coming this year and next year, so that's definitely helpful, but it's still kind of on the slower side. But Jeff Reuter and Meg Linehan, Meg is a good friend of mine. We're in the NWSL Media Association together. They put out an article on Thursday saying that the USL is targeting for a spring 2022 date for that new women's pro league. And I'm just going to read this real quick from their article at The Athletic. It says, the organization declined to comment on this report, but details of the upcoming league are still being finalized. But a progress update provided to the USL Board of Governors did give some clarity on the role it would serve. Most importantly, the league will not be launched as a direct competitor to the NWSL. In fact, the USL is forming an advisory board, which it hopes to involve members from the NWSL, US Soccer, and CONCACAF. The USL is likely, the league for the women would likely resemble a level between USL League One, which is a men's third division, and League Two, a men's amateur development league, as a professional development league with amateur eligibility, which then brings into the question, what's going to happen with the WPSL, because that is kind of the amateur league of women's soccer in the United States. It's really for those collegiate players around the United States who need to get reps and need to get minutes and maybe don't have that big youth club soccer like FC Dallas or the Washington Spirit Reserves in their home market. So, and Pittsburgh has a team with the Pittsburgh Hotspurs, formerly Steel City FC. So that's kind of the soccer update for you guys. I'm going to reach out to the Riverhounds and see if they have any plans on having something to do with this women's pro-am league in the USL, but stay tuned for that. And then the Pirates heading over to baseball are pretty much cleaning the house. So, Owen, I'm going to toss that one over to you. What the heck is happening and why is everyone leaving?
Because the Pirates aren't very good. James Talley to the Yankees and Joe Musgrove to the Padres. It's kind of, obviously getting rid of fan favorites there, especially with Musgrove. And then that heartwarming letter he had on Twitter. It's unfortunate, but this has to happen given that the Pirates were garbage last year and will likely be garbage again this year. But, growing pains, getting draft picks, getting futures, getting minor league players that can eventually make the leap. That's the right thing to do with the current state of the franchise right now. And yeah, really just looking forward to the offseason and the draft didn't happen yet. So, yeah, Kumar Rocker maybe for the Pirates, and yeah, the offseason's in mid swing. Spring training not to start up until, or going to start a little bit soon in the future. I'm pretty sure it's in mid February, and yeah, that's pretty much it for the Pirates.
Pirates fans, don't be too harsh with Owen calling them garbage, because I was going to say something probably.
They'll call them garbage too.
Very, very similar. The only thing that I know is that I feel like Joe Musgrove was like, I don't know, I feel like he was Mr. Pittsburgh. Like everyone seemed to really like him.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of Mr. Pittsburghs that have been traded from the Pirates.
Yeah, definitely. So good luck. Adios. Let's get some youngsters.
Got to start building something because it's been too long.
Let's get some youngsters in here and see what they can do. So over to the Steelers news. The big thing of it all, there's been cheers and there have been jeers, but Dwayne Haskins is a Pittsburgh Steeler, whether you like it or not. He was signed to a 1-year contract. And so evidently, I guess, Ben Roethlisberger says he's coming back. But, Ben Roethlisberger can say whatever he wants, but it's really the Steelers' decision. I know my feelings on this. I want him, adios, hasta la vista, pack your bags. See you maybe never. I genuinely think that Dwayne Haskins can be the starter, because it's just, and you know what? I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, the entire loss was Ben's fault. It wasn't. There were the whole offense was a crapshoot in that game against the Browns. But Ben Roethlisberger has been declining for some time, and towards the end of the year last year was just bad. So I think he needs to go bye-bye, finito, adios. What do you think about Dwayne Haskins in a Steelers uniform?
It's a good start. Obviously, there's a lot of beef going to be made by this signing because, the Ben controversy and everything like that, and he's a free agent and everything. What's going to happen? $41 million, is that worth it for a declining veteran? In a perfect world, the Steelers would have won the Super Bowl this year and Ben would have retired. That obviously didn't happen, and they blew a wet fart in the first round of the playoffs, or in the wild card against the Browns. And they sucked. They were terrible in that game. The start of that game, I turned it on maybe 6 minutes into the game. I was a little late getting to watch the game, and they were down 17-0. They were able to come back there, but I didn't see anything from that team. Obviously, Juju's a free agent. I think he sticks around. And this goes kind of just the same feelings that I have with a bunch of sports teams that I follow. I know what I want to happen, but it's not going to happen. Like, for instance, the Penguins, I want them to start accumulating first-round picks, but that's not going to happen. Same thing goes with the Steelers. I know I want them to get rid of Ben, and, hopefully he doesn't sign with another team because that'd just be too weird. Hopefully he retires. He's a Hall of Famer. And they go to Hoskins for the starting quarterback role, but that's not going to happen. I do not see the Steelers casting Ben aside this easily, though. I think they're going to re-sign him. That's not what a bunch of people want, and it's going to be another year, just like last year. And especially with the season that he lost to injury, he's going to want a chance to redeem himself, and that's pretty much been the story for the later half of his career. But just give me one more year. I promise. I can prove it. I can prove it. And he didn't, and he still hasn't. And obviously, again, it's not his fault, but it is his team for the majority. Their quarterback is usually your best player on your team. And Ben, while he has had some great looks and been on great tears, he just doesn't have it anymore. And usually, again, quarterbacks can play into like their mid-30s, but Ben's too old. The injuries are catching up to him, and I'm sorry. I really wish like he could have rode off into the sunset with the Super Bowl championships and just a franchise start this year. Everything was looking so good, but the Steelers just went back to what they have been over the past, dare I say it, almost a decade now. And I think it's time for Ben to leave.
I think right when the Steelers lost to the Browns, I thought, great, now we're gonna have to hear him say one more year. I'll get it in one more year.
No, that's enough.
For context, I was watching the game with a friend and my priest, and I looked at my priest and I said, "Is it bad to pray for him to just leave?" Like,
no, honestly, he's kind of becoming somewhat of like a tumor on the Steelers. Like, you got to get rid of him sometime before it gets too worse. Like, you're gonna have to pay him so much more money for him to have maybe a mediocre season at best.
Yeah, $41 million. I mean, first off, nobody is worth that much money to play football, but he's definitely not. So there's my rant out of the way. But so Matt Gajtka got himself a promotion to the new offensive coordinator. He was the former QB coach. And to tie into that, there are rumors that, well, not really rumors. It was kind of, made official.
The Matt Gajtka thing isn't official yet, though.
Right. The Matt Gajtka thing is not official yet. But what is kind of official, or is going to be made official on Monday, is that Matt Stafford and the Lions are mutually parting ways. And, Dwayne Haskins being signed is good, but, I'm thinking maybe a little flip.
Matt Stafford to the Steelers.
Yeah, heck yeah. And then trade Ben to Detroit. Have a little flip-flop. Yeah.
He's a free agent.
Who is, Ben or Stafford?
Ben.
Oh, okay. Well, let him go to Detroit and then give us Stafford. Yeah. I think you could get Stafford at a bargain.
They're both free agents, so I don't know. You could do a switch there.
Stafford isn't. They said they're fielding trade offers for.
Oh, he's not a free agent. They're trading him.
Yeah.
Then you would have to give up something.
Give him a couple draft picks. What the heck? Why not?
Draft picks is what this team needs. Look what Chase Claypool did. 2nd round pick.
Yes, but let's not give up like 2nd or 3rd rounders. Let's give up a couple 4th or 5th. Give them.
Would they take that for a franchise quarterback? A former franchise.
Declining franchise.
Declining. Yeah, maybe.
There's the bread.
Maybe,
and butter
but
there.
Do we need another one? I don't know. I really don't know much about Dwayne Haskins. I mean, he was on a team that didn't have a name, so I don't really know. Yeah, much about him overall. Hopefully, he can come in. But again, you need your quarterback to be your best player. So I don't know if we have faith in him to run our team basically.
And something I just saw on Twitter, speaking of quarterbacks, that Devlin Hodges. So shout out to Lauren Alexander, who is the biggest Duck Hodges fan, I think, on the planet, aside from maybe Duck's mom. Mm-hmm. He signed a reserves futures contract with the Los Angeles Rams. So he's going to the city. The farm boy's going to the city. So that should be interesting. Vance McDonald retired. Not too much to say there, except for the fact that he stiff-armed a player again in that Tampa Bay game a couple years ago, and he was a really good blocker, good team player. He's been nominated a few times for the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. I think he's the nominee this year too. Mm-hmm. I could be wrong on that. I will fact check. But congrats to him on retiring and getting the heck out of football with his mentals intact and raking in a little bit. So
for the most part, yeah.
So good for him on that. And then this is something I know you wanted to talk about. What will happen with Ben and Juju in free agency? I know Lauren had written an article about why Juju should be a top priority in free agency, but what are your thoughts on that while I look up about Vance McDonald and Walter Payton?
Okay. Again, just Ben overall, he needs to go. He probably won't. We'll probably go down the same path we always have with one more year type treatment. If I was in charge, he'd be gone. Juju is a top priority free agent. He needs to stay, but he needs to get his act together off the field. Sorry, hockey. And yeah, that's really the main criticism we all have with Juju is just his attitude, and hopefully he won't turn into another one of the toxic twins with Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. And I think he's showing all this. I mean, he's very talented. He's he can run the ball, catch the ball, do whatever you want from a player of his stature. It's just his attitude, and obviously this will be one of his first big paychecks. How much money is he going to cost? Will the Steelers be able to afford it? Will the Steelers be able to afford it with Ben and Juju signing both of them? I don't know, but I really think Juju should stay. He's an overall good person, and that's what the Steelers need is just a good guy to motivate you and the team, but not push it too far like he did with the dancing on the logo things, which was completely disrespectful and a disgrace. But yeah, I think Juju stays, Ben's out, but it probably will be the opposite if we know anything about the Steelers. Ben will stay and Juju will leave, which I hope does not happen.
Likewise. It is Vance McDonald as the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. And since I think this is pretty great, I'm going to read this real quick from the NFL's website about Vance McDonald. It says, when COVID-19 struck in 2020, many families throughout Western PA were struggling to put food on the table, as well as find the necessary PPE equipment to keep them safe. Naturally, Vance McDonald again stepped up to support those in the community who needed it most. In collaboration with his teammate Ben Roethlisberger and favorite nonprofit Convoy of Hope, Vance started the Trucks of Hope campaign. The mission of the campaign is to bring 5 individual trucks of non-perishable food, PPE equipment, and cleaning supplies to 1,000 families. The campaign has raised over $100,000 and 3 trucks have visited the area to support over 3,000 families due to his leadership. So very well done there from Vance McDonald. Obviously, all of the 32 players for the 32 teams that are nominated are very deserving of probably my favorite award at the NFL Honors, and that gets announced before the Super Bowl. So tune into that. I know they take it down to 3 nominees, so definitely keep an eye out to see if Vance McDonald is one of those 3. But we'll get to now your favorite thing, the Penguins.
Yeah.
So talk us through what's going on.
The Penguins are on a 3-game winning streak, but I hate it. The Penguins in these past 3 games have been terrible in the first and second periods for the most part, in the early stages of all the games. And then they've dug their way out of the hole, come back in either in overtime or the shootout and won 3 straight games. They play the Rangers tonight at 7, and the Penguins need to win in regulation for me to not go insane. The Penguins are 3-2-0, but they have not won a single game in regulation. And with, everything that's going on with the shortened season, 56-game season, only playing teams in your division, playing them 8 times, you cannot afford to do that, especially when those other teams get that extra overtime point. We have given the Capitals 2 points and the Rangers 1 point already, despite the fact that we won. So it's concerning. Obviously, you'll take the wins, but the Penguins need to actually, play a full 60 minutes, come out from the start. We actually, for the first time this entire season, we led after the first period against the Rangers game, only to give up 3 goals in 4 minutes in the second period. The Penguins look amazing, but also terrible. And it's not consistent. No consistency is on this team right now. And the players themselves will tell you that, they just need to actually play a full 60 minutes and be able to get a good start in a game and not have to dig themselves out of the hole. Obviously, again, you'll take the wins, and it's a good morale booster when you're able to come back in those wins, but it's not looking good in terms of the fashion and the way that the Penguins are winning these games. But again, they got a winning record so far. My overall thoughts just on the season from an individual player statistic. Obviously, we already have injuries. 4 games in, we've lost half of our defense. Marcus Pettersson, Yusuf Ricola, and Mike Matheson are all out for long term. Chad Ruedel is in. That's good. But we have him always. He's been decent so far. And then Pierre-Olivier Joseph made his NHL debut last night against the Rangers, had an assist. That's been great so far. Cody Cece's also in the lineup regularly now. He had a good game against the Rangers. He had the assist on the Brian Rust goal there. But the Penguins' top players, outside of Crosby, he shows up every night. They, for the most part, have not been contributing to the level that you would necessarily want them to. And the main people that I'm really, aiming this towards is Jason Zucker, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang. Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang are probably the two most criticized Pittsburgh Penguins ever, especially over the past decade. Then Jari, as a goaltender, obviously has that criticism. But Malkin and Letang, for the most part, have been criticized heavily. Malkin only got that one power play goal, if I am remembering this correctly. I think that's his only point of the season so far. Letang has had a couple of assists so far, but he's looked sloppy defensively. He's been costing us turnovers. He's been great in the shootout, though, but he needs to step it up, especially if he wants to get that next contract. He's an unrestricted free agent, not this upcoming season, but next offseason, if I believe. And I don't want to make any bold predictions here, but Chris Letang, his time in Pittsburgh may be coming down or winding down. Not that he's going to get traded this season or in the offseason, but I think that there is a decent chance that Chris Letang doesn't resign when he's a free agent in 2 years. But that's down the line. Malkin has looked, again, not there fully. Bad turnovers, not being able to back check, sloppy on the power play, spending too much time on the ice there, spending the whole 2 minutes out there. And again, the Penguins have those players that you don't expect to be great being great. Mark Jankowski, Teddy Bluger, Casey DeSmith with the Hail Mary pass on a shorthanded 5-on-3 to Teddy Bluger is going to be the goal of the year for the Penguins already. It's phenomenal. And then also, the guys he brought in to do some work in the bottom six, Kasperi Kapanen and Brandon Tanev have looked good so far. And really that was my main concern for the Penguins heading into this season was that, will the bottom six be able to catch up and contribute with the top six? And it's the opposite so far this season. The top six hasn't really been contributing. I see a lot of people, though, bashing Brian Rust. I don't understand that. He's on a 4-game point streak. He led the team in shots against the Rangers. He had his first goal, though. But really what it comes down to is just not only playing a full 60 minutes, but having all of your guys in the lineup playing the game. Because there can't be dead weights on the team. And, there's a lot of players that are just going through the motions right now, especially Evgeny Malkin and Jason Zucker, who I don't even think has a point on the season so far. He may have one assist. But, yeah, overall the Penguins, they need to win in regulation for me to, jump back on the hype train of this team is going to be a Stanley Cup contender, and which I don't even know. That's a whole another topic. But obviously this season's shortened, and it'll be tough to make the playoffs, and hopefully the Penguins can do it. Play the Rangers tonight at 7, and yeah, there's my rant. Also, one last thing, Evan Rodriguez is still on the first line. I absolutely hate that. Kasperi Kapanen should be there. A bunch of people have said it already, but Rodriguez is the new Dominic Simone. He looks awful on the first line. He doesn't look bad. He's in the right spots, right positions. He just can't finish. He doesn't have that finish, and put Kapanen in there, and maybe things will go a little bit better. So that's my rant on the Penguins for this week.
It's never a complete podcast unless we have the Penguins rant. So right now we're going to get into Owen's interview with Matt Gajtka. So thank you to him for joining the show. Owen's leading the way with this, so enjoy.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Pittsburgh Sports Castle Podcast. Today we have another special guest, this time not a player, rather a media professional out of Pittsburgh, PA. He's been a media professional for a good number of years now, producing content for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, Pittsburgh Sports Now, the PIHL Hockey, as well as his own works of Pittsburgh Golf Now and Matt Gajtka Media. Please welcome in a friend of the show, Matt Gajtka.
Hey, sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm not a professional athlete, although, that was the dream for a little while.
Yeah. Well, just overall, wanted to have you on the show just to dive into your sports media career overall. What has it been like just overall working in sports media how long have you been in the business now?
Well, I was just looking back on it. I was actually trying to figure out how many years it's been. It's been more than 20, come to think of it, because I got my start in sports media as a volunteer. I was a sophomore in high school, and I was the statistician and second color analyst in the booth for the local AM station that broadcasted my high school's basketball and football games. So I was 15 years old and doing that. I'm 35 now. So that was the fall of 2000. It would have been that I first really got started, and that was the beginning of it. Ever since then, I feel like I've done just about everything you can do in not just sports media, but media in general. So it's been, I'll say, exciting, number one, just to be able to experience so many of these things. The coolest part about journalism and working in media is just the events for me, to be part of the event, to be able to try to dissect it on your own and make sense of it as well. For me, it's a privilege, and I never take it for granted, whether we're there on site or has been the case since the pandemic started. We're all here doing Zoom calls and everything is from a distance. In a way, I've actually not enjoyed, that's the wrong word, but I have had a chuckle or two at the fact everyone talking about covering things from afar. When I was first getting my start and blogging from home, that's what it was. Now everyone's pretty much blogging from home. So
Yeah.
the playing field has been drastically leveled here.
That's crazy. You started right when around I was born in 2000 overall.
Don't rub it in.
Yeah. When in your life did you come to the realization that you wanted to work in sports? I'm assuming you played sports growing up, and just when did you say, hey, I'm probably not going to be a professional athlete. I would like to work in sports though. Here's what I want to do.
I'd say after my first year trying to play high school hockey, I was realizing I wasn't going to be a professional hockey player. Stuck with golf for a while and considered trying to play in college. But once I got to college, that was really when I got serious about it. But really, the first time I listened to Mike Lang call a Penguins game, or Greg Brown and Lanny Fratteri call a Pirates game, Bill Hillgrove call a Steelers game on the radio, which would have been 97, 98, somewhere in that range when I was 12 or 13 years old, I thought, okay, that's what I want to do. That seems really exciting. And that's really when I got into sports in general. I was late coming to the games, plural, I would say, compared to a lot of folks who get into this. I talk to people and they say, oh, I remember watching the Pirates when I was 6 or 7 years old. I don't. I wasn't really into sports until I was about 12 or 13, like I was saying. But it started pretty hot and heavy from there. It was all at once. So I don't know what exactly caused the transformation there, but I've been enraptured by the whole scene ever since. So yeah, broadcasting got my attention first, but I always enjoyed writing too. And I just feel like that communications in general is one overarching discipline in a way. Now, I think we all are better at certain things compared to others, maybe other areas we have to work on compared to other people. But for me, it's about expressing yourself, and that's the most appealing part of it for me. And like I said at the top, making sense of things, trying to understand something, the how and the why. I feel like those are the most important journalistic questions. You hear about the who, the what, and the where and the when. But for me, it's the how and the why that are the most important. And that's always what I try to address whenever I'm speaking or writing on any subject, but especially sports.
Who were your teams growing up?
Oh, the Pittsburgh pro team.
Okay.
Pirates, Penguins, and Steelers. I grew up in Weirton, West Virginia, which for those who aren't familiar with the area, it's about 30, 40 miles west of downtown. I was born in Pittsburgh, and I always feel like I had that spiritual connection. Funny story, when my brother was born, my mom had to be in the hospital, unfortunately, for about 40 days, both before and after.
Wow.
She gave birth at McGee Women's in Oakland. So my dad and I would drive up literally every day, and I memorized the exits on the way up to Pittsburgh. And it was just talk about ingraining that love for the city at a very young age. I was 3.5 when my brother was born. And ever since then, it just felt like this is where I wanted to be. And I've been able to live here in the Pittsburgh area. I live just north of town right now, but I've been able to live and work in the Pittsburgh area for now more than 7 years since I was able to return to the area after living and working in Michigan and Ohio after college. So I'm happy to be here. This is where I want to be, and this is where I want to make my career. And that triumvirate, that trinity, if you will, of the Penguins, Pirates, and Steelers. Yeah. Those were always, they just all meld naturally one into the other as the seasons pass. That's how you tell time. That's why this pandemic's been so weird.
Because
that part of it's
been
interrupted too. But yeah, that's just, those three teams were just such a part of my life from age 12 on.
So Marshall University, you graduated 2007. What was that overall experience like? And when did you start to flesh out your career going there in Marshall University? And for someone that's in college right now, for me, do you have any advice for someone in the college stage and trying to, take that next step?
Well, for me, I wanted to go someplace that had a journalism focus, right? That had a mass communications school, a journalism school that was well regarded. So I looked at Ohio University, came very close to going to Ohio U, actually. It was down to Ohio U in Marshall. So would have been wearing green either way, and would have gone south either way, but ended up being the Thundering Herd. I was able to, I'll be honest, I got a better scholarship at Marshall, so I went there. It was in-state as well for me, being a native West Virginian, so there was that appeal too. But I didn't know much about Marshall, and I looked at Penn State too. I looked at Duquesne. I looked at Syracuse, drove up there and considered that as well. A little too far from home, I think, for me, at least at that stage of my life. But Marshall was appealing because, well, they had the student newspaper, they had the radio station, and they had the TV station. So they had all three that I could dig into, and I did dig into it right away. I was on the air as a freshman first semester right away. I can't express to you how invaluable that experience is, because as you know, Owen, being in this business, you learn by doing, I think, in this business more than most.
Yeah.
And it's something you can't replace with book learning by any means. I think that's probably the case in a lot of fields, right? I'm not sure if journalism is necessarily unique in that way, but for me, especially broadcasting, to have the feeling of you're on the air and you got to go do it, there's nothing that can replace that. So I really treasure my experiences down at Marshall. I treasure my faculty advisors, my professors, the student leadership there too. That was the cool thing too, was they were all student led. The TV station, the radio station, the newspaper at Marshall, it was all led by the students. We made the calls ultimately, even though we were advised by our professors. Yeah. And part of the journalism curriculum, I majored in broadcast journalism, but we had to do everything. We had to do all three of those, at least for one class, for one semester, and also do public relations, do advertising, digital imaging, which at the time I was in school, that was still kind of a new field. Web design, that was brand new almost, it felt like to me at that time. So I'm sure, Owen, now you have more options as far as multimedia is concerned. It felt like we were all in our own little silos still at that time. It was either broadcasting or writing or PR or advertising. Now it's very much a mix, and I think you have to have some mastery of all those areas. So my suggestion would be to do just that, which is to branch out, get as many experiences as you can, even outside of the mass media and communications realm, but especially inside of it, to understand how to promote something, how to market something. I think that's just as important as writing or producing something good on the broadcast side. It's about making sure that you're able to cut through the noise and get noticed. It's harder than ever to get noticed. So you have to have all those skills, excuse me, in order to succeed. So I would say just leave no stone unturned as far as experiences go while you're there in school, because when you get out of school, you have to start worrying about making money more than you did when you were in school, and that can limit your time and your options.
So you moved around a little bit, not terribly all over, the world or anything, but Michigan, West Virginia, Pittsburgh. What was that like just overall? And how challenging was it to move a lot? And I know you have like a family and kids. What was that like to have to deal with moving around and things like that?
Well, I got married pretty early coming out of school. I met my wife, Jillian, at Marshall. So we were married in 2008. That was about a year after we had graduated. So I know for folks, maybe these days that's a little early, but we felt like that was the right move to make. It was also right as the economic downturn kicked in 2008, 2009. You might be a little young to remember that, but it wasn't so much fun.
Yeah, I remember it vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, so we were young adults just coming out of school into that scenario, and that was not exactly the most comforting feeling in the world, but at the same time, hey, if you can find a job, then you can probably find a job in any environment. Maybe it applies right now too for
that's
young folks coming out of college.
Similar to what's going on with COVID, yeah.
But we moved to my wife's hometown of Grand Rapids, Michigan. That's where I got an internship with the Kalamazoo Wings, a hockey team now in the ECHL. So that'd be the equivalent of like a AA type of a league. That was my start in hockey. Previous to that, when I was in school, I interned with the West Virginia Power, which is a baseball team in Charleston. They used to be part of the Pirate system, in fact, Class A. Now part of the minor league restructuring, they are dropping out of organized, at least professional baseball. Sad for them, but not really relevant to our conversation. That was definitely a stepping stone for me. That was my first job in sports, if you will, for one summer in 2007. So there in baseball, and then in 2008-09 in minor league hockey. Got my first job in Youngstown, Ohio. My wife was willing to move. Thankfully, she actually worked remotely for a bit, and that type of thing is a lot more common now. So maybe it's easier to move around. Back then, it was still a pretty decent consideration. But so you mentioned family. We didn't have kids until 2016, so we waited 8 years. I think that was probably a good choice because we went from Youngstown, Ohio. Then I got a different job in Muskegon, Michigan, up back near her hometown again. We spent some time up there. That was another hockey broadcasting and communications job. These were both Youngstown and Muskegon in the USHL, which is the highest level junior hockey league in America. And a great experience there. That was basically working for a pro team. That was pro experience as far as I was concerned. And then I felt like things were, a little unstable in that side of the business. I didn't like doing sales very much. And I was looking for also a way to flesh out my experience. And I was kind of getting the itch to go back into journalism. So I worked for an outlet up there in the state of Michigan called MLive. It's it was a network of newspapers. Now it's developed into just an all-encompassing multimedia news coverage type of a site. So was in that for a couple of years. Then I got an opportunity to go back to school and work for the men's hockey team and women's lacrosse team at Robert Morris University. And to come back home to Pittsburgh, that's what brought us back here in 2014. Had a couple of stints there. Worked for DK Pittsburgh Sports, covering major league sports here in town, the Pirates and the Penguins primarily. That was a dream come true. So yeah, I've definitely followed the opportunities, and like I said, didn't have kids until 2016. So that made the moves a little bit easier. But at the same time, each decision to move and to jump to something new, it was definitely taken with some serious consideration and real thought and prayer for me. So it wasn't easy to navigate my way, but I always felt like, is this giving me something new, something I don't have on my resume, or an experience I don't have in the old mental Rolodex? And every time I get that opportunity, I find it hard to turn down. So would I have liked to have more stability? Yes, I would say. But at the same time, I also always felt like I was making a move up or a move forward. And that's just what's driven me through a career that, like you said, I haven't been all over the country or anything like that, but it's definitely been one where I've had to adjust and adapt and just try to make the most of what I could with the current job market.
So you mentioned like writing in Pittsburgh for DK Sports. You also, we're on WPXI and then Pittsburgh Hockey Digest. How much of it comes down to just who you know, your connections, and just overall the people in the broadcast journalism world?
Well, sure. I think that once you prove yourself on a certain stage that I was lucky to have at DK Pittsburgh Sports, then I think things just tend to flow more easily from there. And you never know when that break or that big moment's going to come, I would say, if you're asking about advice too. You mentioned that earlier. So I would say so many people will probably quit right before they're going to get their big break. So even if you're working in a different field, like right now with the pandemic, I picked up a part-time job delivering packages for Amazon because I got to pay the bills, right? Mm-hmm. But I've made sure to stay active in media because you never know when you're going to have to just jump right in, or you're going to have the chance to show yourself in front of someone who's influential. So always treat whatever you're doing as the most important thing that you're doing, because it is. And we've never had any scenario like this in the history of media where we can do a podcast like this and literally anybody in the world can listen to it. This didn't always be the case. This wasn't always the case in the world of media, where you were pretty much limited to your immediate area and you had to send out CDs and resume tapes. Now you just send a link, and people can stumble upon your work regardless of where you're doing it physically. So that's a gift, and that's one that I think people should take seriously out there, because like you say, you get to know some people, but I think more importantly, you get to put more work out there, and the more work you put out there, the more of a chance that someone's going to stumble upon it. I would say never fall asleep on potential chances out there. Don't be afraid to reach out to somebody and say, hey, in case you're looking for somebody to help you with something in the near future, I'm here, I'm available, I'm willing, I think I'm qualified, and tell them reasons why. Just put a bug in people's ears, because I know from being in a position sometimes of needing to either hire or bring someone aboard, suddenly you think back when you're in these positions, you're like, okay, do I know anybody offhand? Because it's tough to search for someone to fill a job. Just like it's tough to search for a job, it's also difficult on the management side and on the searching side of it to figure out how to make sense of it and separate people from others in what is typically a pretty crowded job field. So just put your face out there, put your name out there, and keep trying, keep knocking on the door. That's the best advice I have. I'm not saying that I'm some pillar of success here in the business, but I feel like I've been able to carve some things out that I wouldn't have been able to if I didn't have that level of determination. I want to do it. I want it badly, and I want to do it well. So those two things I think can serve you well in this business.
Oh, well, thank you for the advice there, just overall.
Unsolicited maybe that time, but yeah. That's how I feel.
You cover a lot of sports just overall. You're mainly, I guess you would say, a hockey guy. Would you say that? You're mainly a hockey guy?
It's my favorite sport, but goodness, I've called games for the Riverhounds now for 5 years. I've written for Pittsburgh Soccer now. Soccer's right up there. I really enjoy baseball. I enjoy the minutia of it. I reignited my passion for football this season doing Pittsburgh postgame shows on Pittsburgh Sports Live after the Steelers games. That was thrilling and exciting, and I feel like that side of my brain is reactivated. And golf, you mentioned Pittsburgh golf now. So, hockey has probably got a slight edge over a lot of things, but I think that's mostly because I played it more than most other sports. So I have that passion for it from a participating standpoint in addition to a media standpoint.
Does it ever get overwhelming to try and track and follow all these different leagues and all these different sports, or is that just the fan in you that likes to do that anyways?
Yeah, I'm going to do it anyway because I'm curious, but with now 2 kids under the age of 5, it's more difficult. I don't know as much about everything as I used to. I'll put it that way. It's not like I was when I was in college when I felt like I could talk to you intelligently about literally any sport on the planet. Right now, I probably have to do a little more research if I want to, but also now I have higher standards. So maybe I'm being harder on myself. Back 20 years ago, it was just good enough to talk about anything, but now I want to be better than I was the last time out. So that also necessitates more homework and being more plugged in. But, the good thing about getting older, Owen, is that you start to build up that history, and you can always draw upon trends from the past in addition to what's happening in the present. So there is a benefit to getting older. It's not all bad in that way. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, that is something that I've noticed. I know just like 2 years already of covering like hockey on Robert Morris, I can like kind of just even sense the trends from last year and just talk about previous teams. So you mentioned your 2 kids, and obviously the pandemic's still raging on. What does an overall day in the life of Matt Gajtka look like now?
I sleep as long as my older son Lucas allows me. For a while, he was getting me up at 6. Didn't like that. I think he's going through a growth spurt now. So we're getting past 7:30, which is good because, as you know, the sports business is different. I want to stay up and watch the Penguins games. I'm doing post-game shows a lot now, and so that constricts that sleep time. And I can't express how valuable sleep is as a father of young kids. So I that's just as important as getting in a workout or anything that I do for my physical well-being is to get enough sleep. So if I'm able to be an early riser, I like to, but I'm not going to push the envelope here. So first of all, it's getting the kids ready to go, get them off to daycare. We have them with a small daycare group here on our street in our neighborhood, which is really nice. So that limits their exposure to any kind of, COVID issues. It's been, knock on wood, very good for us there. So at that point, then I'll try to do something. Say if I'm doing a delivery shift that day, I've had to try to really be more efficient. So in the morning, I feel like my brain's at its best. I'll try to do some writing or do some research for a broadcast. in the morning when I'm fresh, when I'm feeling good, and I have plenty of energy. But say it's a day where I'm not doing anything else, then I'll get a workout in because that also helps boost the brain. I do my best thinking. I was just out for a run today. It's freezing cold, but I find I do my best thinking when I'm exercising. The blood's getting going, it's pumping, and I get some of those endorphins flowing. So that's my creative process a lot of times is I'll stop and punch something into my iPhone because I want to make sure I capture all those ideas. And I always think that execution is important with an idea, but the quality of the idea is the most important thing. So I don't want to lose any of those, and I'm trying to be better at that as I get older. So whether I'm preparing for a broadcast or I'm trying to put together a column or write something for my Patreon page, whatever, then I try to do that heavy lifting as early in the day as possible. And then sometimes I'm more of a night owl when it comes to writing. After the kids get home, after they get to bed, I can get in a pretty good groove. But I think if you're in college, if you're a student, you have obligations for classes. If you have a job, certainly that constricts your time too. So I don't want to say that you need to work constantly all the time, but when you're energized, strike while the iron is hot. That's what I try to do during a given day, because you're going to have days when you don't feel it. You're not feeling like you're very creative. Goodness, writer's block is real. I think just general mental fatigue is real, especially in this pandemic. You're not seeing as many different environments. I know when I would be covering teams and traveling, that would inspire me so much. Seeing different cities and being on the move, that was really an igniter for me mentally. But now you have to almost create your own. So I try to read as much as I can. That's something else that I try to get in every day. Read from a magazine, read from a book. Make sure you're educating yourself, not just on the news, but on the latest research, on latest trends in your field, in sports. Things that are more of deep dives than just the surface area. So try to read, try to produce something once a day, and I feel strongly about physical fitness, getting sleep, that sort of thing. Take care of yourself physically, because when I feel good, then I think better. Everything's better from that standpoint. So those are things I try to get in each day, I would say. I don't know. I'm not sure I really have an itinerary that I have to follow. You have to be flexible, I would say, but there are certain things that I have to do more often than not.
You mentioned traveling and just that experience. What are some honors in your career that you were like, wow, I got to cover that. I got to talk to this player. I got to go to this city. I got to be in this arena. Are there any specific memories that you remember, or that you regard highly than others?
Well, first of all, every time I get into a sporting venue, I don't have to pay for the ticket. I'm appreciative.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? That never wore off for me, despite the hundreds of baseball and hockey games and the dozens of football games that I covered too here in town, and hope to once again cover in person. We'll see how that goes. But first of all, I always took everything as a gift there, and I just tried to appreciate it from a fan's perspective, realizing that most fans would love to be there in person each and every day if they could. And so that was the energy that I drew from that opportunity. But yeah, as far as specific sporting events, the 2015 wild card game, to be there in Pittsburgh for the largest crowd in PNC Park history, an incredible atmosphere for baseball. I missed the 2013 and 14 wild card games. I was living in Michigan at the time, and I was so jealous of everybody who got to experience that, whether they were in the ballpark or just around the city, being in the area for a winning Pirates team. I'd waited my whole life for that. I'd never really experienced it. So to be there and to get the chance to cover it and to see that Pirates team do as well as it did, I jumped in midstream in 2015 on the beat. And that was just surreal to me to talk to these big personalities like an Andrew McCutchen, a Clint Hurdle. Josh Harrison was always a favorite of mine to talk to. Goodness, Jared Hughes, Tony Watson, all those guys were awesome. Jameson Tyone, name in the news right now, just got traded. I was maybe looking forward to getting back into some Bucco coverage this year and talking to him, but I guess that's not going to happen. But he's right up there. I love picking the brains of Garrett Cole, another intelligent player on the Pirates side that was just awesome to trade Q&A with. In the Penguins context, someone like Sidney Crosby. Just, I know he may give a pretty boilerplate interview, but just little tidbits that he would offer out there. And just to talk to one of the greatest players of all time in his sport, that's an opportunity that you treasure. And I think the one most memorable moment for me on the beat in the major league sports here in town was getting to be there on the ice after the Penguins win the Cup in Nashville in 2017, to cover that whole run and then to see it pay off and to see those guys celebrating with their families and friends. Kids were out there, players parading around with the cup, and just the elation on their faces. That was a privilege to be able to see that and to see the culmination of so many of their careers. So those two things were up there. To cover a Steelers game, I think is definitely a feather in my cap as well. Football is so different from the other sports. It happens once a week, and it's like there's so much information. There's 53 different players to talk to, and the season's over with in 3 or 4 months. So that's a little more intense at one time. That was the most intense, I would say, coverage experience was football, because you want to produce as much as you can from a game. And then, of course, the hockey playoffs were incredibly emotionally intense. So, emotions shape memories. So those are the things that I remember, the big moments. But it's also little things like going to spring training and hanging out with some of the Pirates in a more casual setting and having more time with them. They're more relaxed. You can get to know them better. That was something that always informed my coverage. And I felt like I tried to imbue my writing and my broadcasting with the information that I would glean in those more private moments, as opposed to always just the big moments that we all see on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but who was your favorite Riverhound? Because that's what everyone wants to know, right? Because they're clearly the biggest team in the city.
Well, as far as the Hounds go, most of them are, I would say actually all of them have been awesome to get to know. I think, for one, they're appreciative because they know it's a busy sports market, and they know that a lot of us in the media business are jumping around, and we would love to give the Hounds more attention, but you tend to go to where the fans are most locked in, and we're trying to work on getting the Hounds to be more of a priority. But Kevin Kerr tops on my list. He was always so friendly, first and foremost, and very accommodating with my questions about the sport. Sometimes some of them more rudimentary than others, but he was always terrific. I would say on the current team, Jordan Dover is really cool to talk to. And from a coaching perspective, Bob Lilly is a chess master. I love, he doesn't give you everything, obviously, and he'll save some of it for the tactics of game day, but he will answer your question as best he can, and he'll give you as much as any coach I've ever been around in terms of the thought process that goes into things. And you realize how much he thinks about. And I've come to understand the game of soccer so much better because of talking to Bob Lilly over the past 3 seasons. So that's been tremendous. I would say it's probably a tie in terms of candor between Kevin Kerr and Bob Lilly, and also honorable mention for Rob Vincent too. And he was always tremendously kind, whether I was working in my role as a broadcaster for the Hounds or if I was writing for DK Pittsburgh Sports or now for Pittsburgh Soccer now. So there's several guys, a group of several guys that I would look upon as being especially enjoyable to talk to on the Hound side. And it's always fun to get down there and check out a practice. I hope we can do that this year. I'm looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you have many, but any good just sports media stories that you can share with us?
Stories. Oh, boy. I just think, I don't know if I have any necessarily off the top of my head, like related to media, but there's a certain camaraderie that comes with covering these teams, because as much as you may try to make relationships with those on the team, you're still on the outside when you're in the journalism business. And so I would say particularly in baseball, where you're there almost every day, there comes to be a fellowship of the baseball writers and the baseball broadcasters, because there's so few off days, whether it's in spring training or the regular season, that you come to know people as well as anybody in your own family, at least during that time of the year. So I'm still close with guys on the Pirates beat from my time there, like Stephen Nesbitt, who works for The Athletic now, or Adam Berry, who writes for MLB.com. Bill Brink, who's moved on. He was with the Post-Gazette. These are guys that I saw literally every day. It was it's pretty intense, and there's competition for stories, sure, and I always wanted to outdo them, but it was more of like a sibling rivalry than it was like a feud, like a blood feud, at least when it comes to to most people. There are some people who I feel like they don't really take the job as seriously as I feel like I do, or they don't ask the best questions, or they're a little rude in terms of the etiquette of sports journalism. But for the most part, I appreciate the effort and the passion that it takes to do a good job in this business, whether you're on the writing side or on the broadcasting side. Sorry if that's not something that's like sexy for you, but well, I do know for me, one thing that was always cool was to talk to the broadcasters that I mentioned at the top of the show, like your Greg Browns and your Mike Langs, like to talk to them. Mike Emmerich, my goodness, I have Mike Emmerich's email address. He told me to talk to him whenever I have any questions about the business. It's like, talk about a nice guy. And it's really nice when the people that you grow up admiring are true to your perceptions of them, that they are good people. And that was my favorite moment, I think, as far as the in the media sort of relationships is making relationships with guys like Greg Brown and Bob Walk and Steve Blass and Joe Block on the Pirates side and Mike Lang and Steve Mears. Mearsy's been great as well. He's given me recommendations for jobs too and things like that since I've been on the Penguins beat a few years ago. So that's the coolest part, is making these friendships, because it's hard to explain to people outside of the business what exactly it's like to do this job. It's not like I think people think that we're buddy with the players or something like that. It's not the case, really, for the most part. But you do get to make these, I find them, enduring relationships with people in the media, and that's what I still treasure from my time there.
You mentioned just how you were obviously a Pittsburgh sports fan growing up. What is your opinion on bias when it comes to sports media and just journalism overall, and how that can affect your writing and your coverage of a team?
Well, I think we're all biased. And one thing I heard in college from a professor, Dr. Chris Swindell, I'll throw his name out there, give him a plug. He said, as long as you admit your bias, you're doing your job. If you feel like you are compromised, then maybe your editor takes you off the beat or whatever. But it depends on the severity of it. But in a large sense, I think the audience appreciates when you say, well, I come from it from this perspective. And then they can take whatever you say with how many grains of salt they determine to be necessary. And I don't think you're ever going to be able to meet that perfect platonic journalistic ideal of objectivity. I'm not sure objectivity or impartiality is possible as a human being, but I think fairness is possible, and I think striving for objectivity is possible. So you try to get as close to that mountaintop as you can without reaching it. I don't know if anyone's ever reached it. We're not robots, right? But you do the best you can to be as fair as you can. And Owen, I think if you emphasize the consumer and you think about how can I serve the consumer best, then you're putting yourself in the best possible position. Because if you're not thinking about the person who is either reading or hearing or watching what you're doing first, then what are you doing it for? Are you doing it for your own ego? Or are you doing it to execute some sort of a political power play with someone that you're covering? I think you can get into some dicey territory there if you stop thinking about the news consumer first. So, as far as bias goes, we're all biased in our own ways. But I think we can, in a large degree, still produce fair content. And I think fair is the more worthy goal. It's the more attainable goal than pure objectivity or an absence of bias.
Are there any? I mean, I'm sure there are, but what are the unwritten rules in sports broadcasting?
Some of them might be written, but I would say if you're doing TV, especially, and I've done more and more TV, especially with the Hounds and high school hockey and college hockey recently, don't say what the viewer can see. You don't have to necessarily narrate everything, but give them some color. When you're on a TV broadcast, it's a different experience from a radio broadcast. Radio broadcast, you're the eyes and ears, so you have to be more on top of everything. And that's what frustrates me at times when I hear radio broadcasters doing more of a TV call and not telling you what's happening. It's incredible how often I'll listen to a radio game and I'm like, what just happened there? How can you not tell me what just happened? Give me as much description as possible. The play-by-play person runs the show there on the radio side, but TV side, it's not so much where you have to just say everything that's happening. There can be a certain rhythm to it. And I mentioned Mike Emmerich, just retired, but multi-time Emmy Award winner. He did more of a radio style call on TV, but with his word choice, with his cadence, with his level of volume, he conveyed the excitement of the game that way. So certainly there are different styles. There's room for styles is what I'm saying in sports broadcasting. But I would say don't say anything that makes the viewer go, duh, I knew that already. Always try to give them some insight that they may not be able to get from watching at home. Beyond that, I think it depends on the format and the sport, but radio especially, time and score, right? That's the biggest thing. That's a frustration for me at times. I know most people now are listening on their phones, not most, but maybe a lot more people are listening on their phones and they can see the score right in front of them and the time of game. But I still think it's nice to not have to distract yourself. If you want to just listen to something, then I think you want to give the listener as much information as possible without forcing him or her to go to go somewhere else. So be a reporter. That's my number one thing when you're on the air is to convey as much as possible. Be that conduit, right? And be that person who can enhance the experience for the viewer or the listener at home.
Yeah, Mike Lang, doesn't he have an hourglass that he flips over every single time, and he has to do the score and the time every time? That's
a pretty common thing. You'll hear a lot of broadcasters talk about that. I almost said a lot of guys talk about that. I think now we're starting to finally see some female voices come into sports broadcasting too.
Yesterday, yeah.
Yeah, it's terrific because I don't know why, but for whatever reason, play-by-play has been dominated by men over the years. So I'm encouraged to see women get into this field more and more often. And the more diversity of voices and perspectives you get, I think the better product that comes out of it, whether it's from the diverse voices themselves or from a white guy like me who is forced to up his game because he sees something that's interesting from a newcomer in the field. So I think if you talk about unwritten things, I'm glad that that white male or just that male voice stereotype is starting to fade to the background here. We're starting to be more accepting as an industry and more welcoming and more searching for different sounds and people from different places. You see the Hindi broadcast on Hockey Night in Canada. It's amazing. So things like that can only make the broadcast and the sports better.
And then last question, just overall, I'll ask again, as an aspiring sports media professional myself, what can I be doing to take that next step? I mean, I'm a junior right now, trying to, get into the job world right now when I graduate next year, especially with the world that's going on right now.
I would say try to get better every day. It's just like being an athlete, man. You have to sharpen your skills. And if there's a day when I'm not doing a broadcast, like if I weren't doing this show today with you guys, I'd be reading something out loud from a magazine. I'd be trying to work on my diction, on my focus. I'd be writing something. I'd be researching something. Like I said, trying to read up on things that I'm interested in. So it doesn't have to be necessarily a physical skill. It can just be accumulating knowledge, but that makes you better, right? So I would just say every day, do something that makes you better and makes you a better, I don't want to say job candidate because that tends to objectify you. I want you to do whatever you want to do. I don't want you to be subject to the whims of employers. If it's making your own way in this business, if it's doing your own thing, being an entrepreneur, I think that's wise as well to always to have some level of control over your media career. I'm glad you guys are doing this podcast because it gives you something you have control over by yourself. And that experience is valuable as opposed to just doing something for somebody else. So that's what's cool about the current media environment too, is you can produce something like this yourself and not just get reps, but also have some agency over your career. So that's what I would say, is that take the initiative each and every day. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You could write something that's bad and never use it and never publish it. You could create a podcast that you think stinks and you just scrap it. But at the same time, you learn something from those mistakes. So don't get discouraged if whatever you do each and every day isn't perfect, because if you do something every day, it's just like being an athlete. You're not going to be at your best every day. You wonder, well, why didn't Sid make that pass today? He made that pass the other day and it was perfect. Well, he's not a robot, as robot-like as he may appear.
He does appear, though.
Excellence. But it's just, if you keep pushing that rock up the mountain, some days you may stumble down a few feet, but for the most part, you're going to make progress over the long term. So try to take that long view by doing something every day.
Well, thank you for coming in and sharing your knowledge and experience with us. Again, just overall, and I hope to push that rock up the mountain as far as I can.
The Greek Sisyphus, he kept pushing it up and never got to the top. So I take more of an optimistic view of things than that.
Rachel, do you have any other thoughts?
Matt, it's always a pleasure. It's good to hear your voice and talk to you again. And I likewise share your sentiments. I usually see Matt at the Riverhounds game, so I hope that we can get back there this season. And, you know, as somebody who is kind of new to the broadcast game, I've been the last 2 seasons doing the color commentating for the University of Pittsburgh women's soccer. I co-sign everything that you said. And, you know, it's great to have more diversity and voices in the industry. I'm super fortunate to have the opportunity, grateful for Randy Waldrum for basically giving me the stepping stone. But, you know, I learned so much from you. I learned a lot from John Krasinski, our friend over at Pittsburgh Soccer Now. So it's always a pleasure. And just, I hope we can see each other soon again. It's been too long.
Yeah, I agree that the Zoom stuff's getting a little bit old after nearly a calendar year here. Hey, I'm optimistic. May, it's looking like the USL is going to push for that. I'm just more generally optimistic about outdoor sports in general. I know this new strain of COVID is starting to spread. We see the University of Michigan postponing events and things like that. So I'm still nervous about indoor sports. I'm not thinking we're home free in hockey and basketball as of right now. But yeah, outdoor sports, I'm just looking forward to the summer because I think that's finally we're going to get to that point, that critical mass of vaccinations and all that's going to add up. And yeah, Rachel, it was terrific to hear you on those Pitt broadcasts. And it's so cool that these platforms are out there, ACC Network, ESPN Plus. People like ourselves can get more reps than we ever could in the past. We would have to be waiting our turn forever and ever in the past. Now we can get on the air quicker, and not that it's necessarily still easy to find those opportunities. You still have to work for them, but every time I do a show like this or a game, I feel like I'm getting better gradually. And I try to cut myself a break and not be too much of a perfectionist, but that also can drive you too. So I know you're like that as well. And I know that, just having this experience will make you better. And Owen, great to talk to you too. I saw you doing the RMU hockey games. I stood right next to you there when I was doing sports information, and talk about great experience. Hockey is so difficult to call, but it's so satisfying when you get it right. So I was happy to see you take an interest in that.
Well, thank you again for coming on. I'll be sure to see you sometime in the near future.
I hope so. Here's hoping, right? Yep. We'll see you guys later.
See ya.
Well, that was fun. Thanks for leading the way on that. That was great. No, so now we're going to close out the show with some bold predictions for the big 4 teams. So we talked about them all at the beginning of the show. And we're going to start off again with the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. So let's do it. Bold prediction. My bold prediction for the Riverhounds is something that you say a lot about the Penguins. I think this is going to be the rebuilding year. They had a lot of players walk away. And the fact that I know that the Hounds will have a complete roster when the time comes. But the fact that they only have 10 players signed right now is not great. So I think this is going to be a rebuilding year, losing some of the guys that walked away, like Tommy Van Kazeel, Toby Adewal, is really, really, really going to hurt. So yeah, that's my prediction on them.
My prediction, given the fact that I'll come out and say that this is the team that I follow the least out of the 4, my prediction is that I personally am going to become a Riverhounds fan in the upcoming season. Whether that be going to games, whether that be, working with the team. I applied for an internship for them. Hopefully I'll be able to squeak my way in there. Or just, being able to become a fan of the team. Hopefully we'll be able to go to games as fans. And that's just my overall prediction. I'm looking to get into not just the Riverhounds, but just soccer overall, given the fact that it is the most popular sport in the world. And that's my prediction for the Riverhounds.
Well, you can get started getting into soccer. The U.S. men's national team plays on the 31st against Trinidad and Tobago. So a little plug right there for you. So we'll go on to the Pirates next. Spring training begins on February 27th. My God, that is early. Okay. So a bold prediction from each of us. Now, this is the section that I am least knowledgeable on. I cannot say that I will become a big baseball fan this year because I like going to the games, but I'm not watching a baseball game. There's nothing appealing to me.
It's fun if you're there. Watching it on TV is just it's the thing you'll put on if there's nothing else to watch.
And if you need background noise or something.
Background noise. It's a good It's relaxing.
So my bold prediction is that I don't know. I'll watch 5 games this year, I guess.
You'll watch 5 games?
I'll watch, even if it's just background noise. I was going to say something like totally bonkers, like, oh, Nutting will sell the team, but like, that's never going to happen. You have to pry it out of his cold, dead hands. So let's move to you.
My prediction's pretty straightforward. The Pirates will draft Kuma Rocker first overall in the 2021 draft. They have the first overall pick because they were awful. And I don't think he'll make the team obviously in the first year, but he could. And hopefully he'll be the next big thing for the Pirates. That's pretty much all I have for them.
You said earlier tonight the Penguins play the Rangers. This show is coming out right before that game. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So the bold prediction from each of us. I'm gonna let you go first.
My bold prediction is kind of off the last podcast that I was on. I said that the Capitals will miss the playoffs. I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I'm still going to say the Capitals could miss the playoffs. The Capitals or the Penguins will miss the playoffs. One of those two teams will miss the playoffs. The other one will make it. Right now it's leaning towards the Penguins. Obviously, the Capitals are going through their own struggles right now. Ovechkin and all the Russian players that they had, they were hanging out in a hotel room, and Samsonov had COVID. So that's bad for them, and they're out for 2 weeks. And that's like a lot of their good players there. Kuznetsov, Orlov, their starting goaltender Samsonov, and Ovechkin. They're all out because of COVID. But anyways, I don't see both of those teams making the playoffs. They're both former Stanley Cup contenders. I don't see either of them being contenders this year. And I think there's too many good teams in the New East Division, especially the Rangers, who we play tonight, that could make the playoffs. You still got the Bruins, the Flyers, and the Islanders. And who knows, maybe the Devils or the Sabres can make a run. But, that's my prediction. The Penguins and the Capitals will not make the playoffs together. One of them will make it, though.
I'm going to have a way too early. I'm going to go general here. Hockey prediction. I'm devastated that Russia does not get to play under their flag. I am going to refrain from commenting my real feelings about all of that for like Olympics and like World Cup and stuff like that, because, I'll probably get reported as like a sleeper agent or something. And I promise I'm not. I'm an American citizen and a dual citizen of Russia. But even though they don't play under their flag, they still get to play in the Olympics, just like in 2018. 2018. Olympic athletes from Russia. Russia will win the gold in hockey at the Olympics.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, that's pretty.
We're awesome. Anyway.
The KHL has a lot of just superstars that can come out of there and, win a gold medal for them easily.
Yeah, and Russia's nothing but ice, so they better. And they're going to, extract revenge on the fact that they don't get to play under their flag for a not great reason. Anyway, okay, enough of that. Last but not least, we'll go to the Steelers. April 29th to May 1st is the NFL draft. The NFL combine is quote unquote canceled, but the pro days are technically the NFL combine. So that's kind of a little switcheroo because of COVID. Good job, NFL. You came up with something smart. I'm proud of you. Super Bowl picks for 2021 at time of recording, Green Bay and Tampa Bay are playing right now. And then Buffalo and Kansas City. I'm picking a Buffalo Bills, Green Bay Packers. Wow, there's a lot of fans at Lambeau. There probably shouldn't be that many fans. Oh my gosh. Anyway, that's horrifying. Buffalo Bills, Packers, somehow, some way, the Bills are going to do it. I'm on the hype train.
Yeah.
And this is my message to Steeler Nation. Get off your high horse and support the Bills. I promise you it won't kill you. It won't keep you up awake at night. Get off your high horse. You're allowed to support the Bills. And it's fun to watch them jump through tables.
They're my pick as well. Well, if I had to pick a specific team, they're my pick. But I think whoever wins today's game, the Chiefs or the Bills, will win the Super Bowl. I think this is pretty much the equivalent to when the Penguins and Capitals played each other three straight years, and the winner of every one of those series won the Stanley Cup. So I think these are the two best teams in the league, and whoever wins tonight or today will win the Super Bowl. And I think it'll be the Bills. I think I like Josh Allen, and just it'll be nice for their fans to finally get something. Buffalo, just in general as a city, to finally get something. Maybe they'll choke. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, they'll probably choke, and it'll be like the Packers or someone. But yeah,
as long as it's not Tom Brady, I really don't care. And I can't even. I don't even think I can say that anymore because he's not with New England. I'm okay if he won in the sense of him being with.
As long as he just didn't cheat. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. I was pulling. I was really.
But would you want Antonio Brown to win the Super Bowl?
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, so no.
I was pulling for New Orleans, and I was pretty upset they lost, especially with Drew Brees. But that's going to do it for us. We are on Twitter at PGH Sports Castle. Cody has his little side outlet called Let's Talk Pity. Has some good stuff over there. I'm on Twitter at Rachael Kriger. There's 2 A's in my name, not just one. Owen's on Twitter at Krepps. I always read it as OK Reps. Krepps 85. And then he has his YouTube channel that is still just called Owen Krepps.
Yeah.
Check it out. He's got some good stuff on there. Matt's Twitter, I'm going to spell it out because, good luck spelling Gajtka out. So it is Matt Gajtka. That's going to be in the show notes for everybody. So follow Matt on Twitter. Don't forget that we're on all major platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to check us out by searching our name. We're also on Google Podcasts, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, and Spreaker, where we, of course, record our shows. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Your feedback is important to us, and any reviews posted will help make the podcast more visible to listeners. And if you ever have any ideas for prompts or topics or whatever, feel free to send us a note along. So thanks again, and thank you to Matt for joining us, and we will see y'all next time.